Admiral Yudo Nakamura stood before the vast transparent dome of Luna Command, watching Earth turn in its ancient dance. The blue marble looked pristine from here, its cities gleaming like scattered diamonds against the continents. It was a world perfected by the Solar Ascendancy's bioethical laws, a world where human genetics remained as pure as they had been for the past 3 centuries. Admiral. The voice belonged to Director Chen, head of the Genetic Compliance Division. Her approach was silent, deliberately so. In the Ascendancy, those who enforced the purity doctrine moved like shadows. The Council requires your immediate attention. Yudo turned, his augmented eyes automatically cataloging Chen's biometrics. Heart rate elevated, stress hormones significantly above baseline. Whatever had brought her here was serious enough to crack her legendary composure. "The outer fringe," he asked. "Kepler 442b. The mining colony we established 30 years ago." Chen activated her holoprojector, and the peaceful view of Earth was replaced by data streams, genetic profiles, and most disturbing of all, evolutionary progression charts. The colonists are changing. Yudo studied the data with growing unease. The genetic markers were human, unmistakably so, but they showed variations that should have been impossible. Bone density increases of 40%. Neural pathway formations that exceeded baseline human capacity by orders of magnitude. Most troubling of all, these changes appeared to be accelerating with each generation. "Illegal genetic modification," he concluded. "That was our first assumption." Chen's fingers danced through the hologram, pulling up communication logs. "We sent 3 investigative teams over the past 18 months. The first reported everything normal. The second found evidence of rapid evolutionary change but attributed it to environmental pressures. The third, the data stream cut to static, lost 17 days ago. Their last transmission was unusual." Chen played an audio file. Through the crackling static, a voice emerged, one of the missing agents, Dr. Sarah Voss. "Control, this is remarkable. The population isn't just adapting, they're being taught. There's something here, something that understands evolution at a quantum level. It's beautiful and terrifying," and the transmission dissolved into white noise. Yudo felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. For 3 centuries, the Solar Ascendancy had maintained genetic purity through strict enforcement of the bioethical compact. No genetic modification, no artificial enhancement, no deviation from the human genome that had carried them to the stars. It was the foundation of their civilization, the lesson learned from the gene wars that had nearly destroyed Earth. "I'll need a ship," he said. "The Helix is being prepared. Full scientific complement plus a squad of purity enforcers." Chen paused. "Admiral, if what we're seeing is artificial, if someone is violating the compact on this scale, the response will need to be decisive." Yudo nodded grimly. The penalty for genetic terrorism was total sterilization of the affected population. It was harsh, but the survival of humanity's genetic integrity demanded nothing less. Or so the Ascendancy taught. 3 weeks later, the ISV Helix dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Yudo stood on the bridge, watching the orange dwarf star grow larger on the main display. Kepler 442b appeared as a small dot, its surface hidden beneath swirling clouds. "Long-range scans are picking up the colony," reported Lieutenant Torres, the ship's sensor officer. "Population reading is strange, sir." "Define strange." "The settlement shows approximately 8,000 life signs, but the genetic diversity readings are off the charts. It's as if we're looking at dozens of different subspecies." Dr. Emilia Vasquez, the expedition's lead geneticist, looked up from her console with a frown. "That's impossible. The original colony was established with 500 genetically screened individuals. Even with natural reproduction over 30 years, the variations shouldn't be this extreme." Yudo moved to the tactical station where Commander Sarah Beck, leader of the Purity Enforcers, was reviewing deployment strategies. Her face was set in the hard lines of someone who had seen the aftermath of genetic terrorism before. "Sir, I recommend we establish a quarantine perimeter immediately," Beck said. "If this is an outbreak of uncontrolled genetic modification, we can't risk contamination spreading to other systems." "Negative. We investigate first." Yudo's tone brooked no argument. "I want to understand what we're dealing with before we take action." The helix entered orbit around Kepler 442b, and the initial surface scans painted a picture that defied explanation. The colony had grown far beyond its original parameters. Where there should have been a single mining settlement, sprawling cities now covered vast areas of the planet's surface. The architecture was unlike anything in Ascendancy records, organic curves that seemed to flow rather than being built. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "You need to see this. I'm picking up quantum signatures from the planet's surface. Something down there is manipulating matter at the subatomic level." Yudo moved to her station. The quantum readings were unlike anything he'd seen before. Patterns that suggested intelligence, purpose, and a level of technological sophistication that surpassed even the Ascendancy's capabilities. "Life signs are moving toward the landing zone," Torres reported. "They appear to be welcoming us." On the main display, figures emerged from the flowing buildings of the nearest city. Even from orbit, their modifications were visible. Some moved with the fluid grace of enhanced musculature. Others showed the distinctive bone ridges of adapted radiation resistance. A few appeared to have additional sensory organs. "My God," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "They're not hiding it. They're celebrating it." Commander Beck's hand moved to her sidearm. "Sir, I strongly recommend we go down," Yudo decided. "Full diplomatic protocol, weapons secured unless directly threatened." "Admiral, these people have violated every principle of the bioethical compact. They're no longer genetically human." Yudo turned to face Beck, his expression calm but firm. "Then we need to understand why and how. Prepare the shuttle." The shuttle descended through Kepler 442b's atmosphere, revealing a world transformed. What had once been a harsh mining planet now bloomed with impossible biodiversity. Crystal forests stretched to the horizon, their translucent trees pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Rivers flowed in defiance of gravity, their waters spiraling upward in helical streams that fed floating gardens. "The atmospheric composition has changed," Dr. Vasquez reported, her instruments tracking molecular shifts in real time. "Oxygen levels are 30% higher than they should be. The entire ecosystem has been optimized." Admiral Yudo watched the approaching landing zone with growing amazement. The city was alive in ways that conventional architecture could never be. Buildings breathed, their walls expanding and contracting in rhythmic cycles. Streets pulsed with rivers of light that seemed to respond to the movements of the inhabitants. And the inhabitants themselves. As the shuttle touched down, Yudo got his first clear look at what the colonists had become. They moved with inhuman grace, their enhanced physiology immediately apparent. Some showed the elongated limbs of low-gravity adaptation, while others displayed the thick bone structure needed for radiation resistance. But it wasn't just physical modification. Their eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost alien in its depth. A delegation approached the landing site, led by a woman whose genetic modifications were subtle but profound. Her neural pathways were visible beneath translucent skin, pulsing with electrical activity that suggested cognitive enhancement beyond anything the Ascendancy had ever achieved. "Welcome, Admiral Nakamura," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in frequencies human ears shouldn't have been able to detect. "I am Dr. Lyra Chen, formerly of the Genetic Compliance Division." Yudo felt his blood chill. "You're supposed to be dead. Your ship was reported lost 15 years ago." "Not lost, transformed." Lyra's smile was radiant with an intelligence that seemed to illuminate her from within. "Like all of us here." The catalyst showed us what we could become. The catalyst. You'll meet it soon enough, but first you should see what we've built here, what we've become. She gestured to the living city around them. This is what happens when evolution is guided by understanding rather than constrained by fear. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her ascendancy conditioning. The genetic modifications, they're unprecedented. How did you achieve this level of controlled evolution without destroying cellular integrity? We didn't achieve it, Lyra replied. We were taught. The catalyst has been waiting for us to reach the stars, waiting for us to be ready to take the next step in human development. Commander Beck's hand moved to her weapon. You're speaking of illegal genetic modification on a massive scale. The bioethical compact exists to prevent exactly this kind of genetic terrorism. Terrorism. Lyra's expression showed genuine confusion. Look around you, Commander. Do you see suffering? Do you see genetic degradation or loss of humanity? We've become more human than ever before, more capable of compassion, of understanding, of reaching our true potential. As if summoned by her words, the city around them began to shift. The buildings' breathing intensified, and patterns of light began flowing through the streets toward a massive structure at the city's center. It was unlike anything in human architecture, a spiraling tower that seemed to twist through dimensions, its surface reflecting realities that existed just beyond perception. The catalyst is ready to meet you, Lyra said. But Admiral, I should warn you, once you've seen the truth of what we can become, the Ascendancy's vision of genetic purity will never look the same. Yuto felt the weight of centuries of human civilization pressing down on him. The bioethical compact had prevented the horrors of uncontrolled genetic modification, had preserved the essence of what made them human. But looking at the wonder around him, at the obvious joy and enhancement of the colonists, he began to question everything he thought he knew. Lead the way, he said. The path to the catalyst's dwelling wound through what Lyra called the quantum garden, a space where the normal laws of physics seemed more like gentle suggestions. Plants grew in mathematical spirals that hurt to look at directly, their leaves existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Small creatures that might once have been insects now displayed intelligence in their compound eyes, forming complex patterns in the air as they flew. How is any of this possible? Dr. Vasquez whispered, her instruments giving readings that defied conventional science. The catalyst exists partially in quantum superposition, Lyra explained as they walked. It experiences all possible evolutionary paths simultaneously and can guide matter along the most beneficial routes. What you see here is 30 years of directed evolution, not random mutation, but purposeful enhancement toward optimization. Commander Beck maintained her security posture, but Yuto could see the awe creeping into her expression despite her training. The energy requirements alone should be impossible. You're talking about manipulating matter at the quantum level across an entire planetary ecosystem. The catalyst doesn't require energy the way we understand it, Lyra said. It feeds on information, on the complexity and beauty of evolutionary possibilities. Every adaptation, every enhancement, every step toward greater consciousness makes it stronger. They passed through a grove where children played, if they could still be called children. Some displayed enhanced cognitive abilities that allowed them to manipulate the environment through focused thought. Others showed physical adaptations that let them move through the three-dimensional maze of the garden like living poetry. All of them radiated a joy and contentment that was unmistakable. They're not afraid, Dr. Vasquez observed. In the Ascendancy, genetic modification is associated with horror stories, with the gene wars and the millions who died from uncontrolled enhancement. These children have never known that fear. Because here, evolution is guided by wisdom rather than driven by ambition, Lyra replied. The catalyst doesn't enhance for power or advantage, it enhances for harmony, for the optimization of consciousness and joy. Admiral Yuto found himself deeply troubled. Everything he was seeing contradicted the fundamental principles of the Solar Ascendancy. Yet he could see no evidence of the genetic horrors that the bioethical compact was designed to prevent. No degradation, no loss of humanity, no descent into the monstrous forms that had characterized the gene wars. The tower grew larger as they approached, its impossible geometry becoming more apparent. It seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, with surfaces that reflected not just light but possibility itself. As they drew closer, Yudo began to feel a presence, vast, ancient, and utterly alien in its intelligence. "The catalyst has been waiting for this moment," Lyra said as they reached the entrance. "It's been influencing events throughout the galaxy, preparing for the time when humanity would be ready to evolve beyond its current limitations." "Influencing events how?" Commander Beck demanded. "The bioethical laws of the Ascendancy, the strict genetic controls, even the gene wars themselves." Lyra's expression was sympathetic but firm. All of it was necessary to bring humanity to this point, to create the tension between control and freedom that would eventually lead to true understanding. The implications hit Yudo like a physical blow. "You're saying the catalyst manipulated our entire civilization, guided it, like a gardener preparing soil for the right seeds." They passed through the entrance into a space that seemed infinite despite being clearly contained within the tower. The fear of genetic modification served its purpose. It prevented premature and dangerous experimentation. But now that purpose is complete. Humanity is ready for its next phase. In the center of the impossible space, something awaited them. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. A being of living quantum foam, existing in constant superposition between states. When Yudo tried to focus on it directly, his enhanced vision failed to process what he was seeing. The catalyst was everything and nothing, all possibilities and none. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating in the quantum field that surrounded them. "Welcome, Admiral Nakamura. I have been waiting for you to arrive." The catalyst's presence was overwhelming, not in a crushing way, but like standing at the edge of an infinite ocean of possibility. Admiral Yudo felt his consciousness expanding despite himself, his awareness touching on concepts that human language had no words for. "You're afraid," the catalyst observed, its voice harmonizing with frequencies that existed beyond normal space-time. "Your species has learned fear as a survival mechanism, but fear of evolution is fear of life itself." "The gene wars killed billions," Yudo said, struggling to maintain his mental footing in the presence of such vast intelligence. "Uncontrolled genetic modification led to horrors that nearly destroyed human civilization." "Yes, it was necessary." The catalyst's form shifted, showing glimpses of possible futures, past alternatives, paths not taken. "Your species needed to learn the dangers of evolution without wisdom. The trauma created the controls that prevented premature advancement. Now those controls have served their purpose." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific mind grappling with implications that rewrote everything she thought she knew about biology. "You've been planning this for centuries, manipulating human development across the entire galaxy." "Not manipulating, gardening." The catalyst's response came with sensory data that bypassed normal perception, images of civilizations rising and falling, of evolutionary pressures carefully applied across millennia. "Intelligence must mature before it can safely transcend its biological limitations. Your species is finally ready." Commander Beck raised her weapon, though she seemed uncertain whether it would have any effect on a being of living quantum possibility. "Ready for what?" "To abandon humanity entirely, to become truly human for the first time." The catalyst's attention turned to her, and Beck gasped as her consciousness briefly touched the edge of expanded awareness. "What you call humanity is merely the larval stage of what your species can become. Every colonist on this world proves it." Lyra moved closer to the quantum being, her enhanced neural pathways allowing her to interface with its consciousness more directly than the others. Show them what we've learned about the political implications, Catalyst. They need to understand the scope of what's happening. The space around them filled with holographic representations of the galaxy, highlighting worlds where similar evolutionary acceleration was taking place. Yudo counted dozens of systems, all showing signs of quantum-guided enhancement. The outer fringe isn't the only place this is happening, he realized. No, across 47 worlds, populations are evolving beyond the limitations of baseline humanity. Each group develops differently based on their environment and needs, but all are guided by the same principle: optimization of consciousness and capability. And the ascendancy? Commander Beck asked, though her voice had lost its earlier aggression. Will resist, the Catalyst acknowledged. Fear of change is deeply embedded in your governmental structures, but resistance will only delay the inevitable. Evolution is not a choice. It is the fundamental nature of life itself. Dr. Vasquez was recording everything, her instruments barely able to process the quantum information flooding through the space. The scientific implications are staggering. If conscious guidance can direct evolution at the quantum level, we're talking about the ability to solve every biological limitation humanity has ever faced. Disease, aging, environmental adaptation, cognitive enhancement, all of it becomes possible, Lyra confirmed. But more than that, we become capable of true understanding. Enhanced consciousness allows us to perceive the universe in ways that baseline humans cannot imagine. Admiral Yudo felt the weight of decision settling on him. Everything he had devoted his life to, the preservation of human genetic purity, the enforcement of the bioethical compact, was being revealed as a temporary measure, a cosmic holding pattern while humanity matured enough to take its next step. What happens to those who choose not to evolve? He asked. They will live out their natural lives in the solar system, maintaining the old ways for as long as they choose, the Catalyst replied. But their children will face the same choice, and their children's children. Eventually, all sentient life evolves toward greater complexity and consciousness. It is the nature of existence itself. And if the Ascendancy decides to use force to stop this evolution, the Catalyst's form shifted, showing glimpses of possible futures, fleets of warships, planets sterilized by orbital bombardment, the attempted genocide of enhanced populations. Then they will fail. You cannot destroy an idea whose time has come, but they may cause great suffering in the attempt. The implications began to crystallize in Yudo's mind. He wasn't just facing a local violation of genetic law. He was witnessing the beginning of a species-wide transformation that would reshape human civilization. The question wasn't whether evolution would continue, but whether it would proceed peacefully or through conflict. You need someone in the ascendancy hierarchy, he said slowly. Someone to advocate for a peaceful transition. We need someone who has seen the truth and understands both perspectives, Lyra agreed. The enhanced populations don't want war, Admiral. We want understanding. But if the Ascendancy chooses violence... She didn't need to finish the sentence. Yudo had seen enough of the colonists' capabilities to know that a war between baseline and enhanced humans would be devastatingly one-sided. The Catalyst's attention focused on him with gentle intensity. The choice is yours, Admiral Nakamura. You can return to the solar system with orders to destroy this world and all like it. Or you can help broker a future where both evolutionary paths can coexist until natural selection takes its course. Yudo closed his eyes, feeling the weight of human civilization's future settling on his shoulders. When he opened them again, his decision was made. The shuttle flight back to the Helix was conducted in near silence. Admiral Yudo stared out at the transformed landscape of Kepler 442b, his mind churning with implications that seemed to reshape reality with each passing moment. Beside him, Dr. Vasquez frantically reviewed her data, while Commander Beck maintained a professional calm that didn't quite hide her inner turmoil. "Admiral," Beck finally said as they entered the ship's hangar bay, "what are your orders regarding the colony?" Yudo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he made his way to his quarters, where he sealed the door and activated the room's privacy screens. For the first time in his career, he needed to think without the weight of military protocol pressing down on him. The Catalyst's revelations had fundamentally altered his understanding of humanity's place in the universe. For 3 centuries, the Solar Ascendancy had built its civilization on the principle of genetic purity, the belief that human DNA was sacred and must be preserved unchanged. The gene wars had provided the historical justification, the nightmare scenario that proved uncontrolled genetic modification led only to horror. But what if those wars had themselves been part of a larger design? What if the trauma and subsequent restrictions had been necessary stages in humanity's development, like a vaccination that prevented more serious disease later? A chime indicated an incoming priority transmission from Luna Command. Director Chen's face appeared on his screen, her expression tense with anticipation. "Admiral, your initial report indicated unusual genetic variants among the colonists. What's your assessment of the situation?" Yudo considered his words carefully. "The situation is more complex than we anticipated, Director. The genetic modifications appear to be the result of external influence rather than human experimentation." "External? Are you suggesting alien contact?" "Something like that." Yudo paused, knowing that his next words would determine the fate of millions. "I need more time to evaluate the threat level and determine appropriate response protocols." Chen's frown deepened. "Admiral, the bioethical compact is clear on the appropriate response to large-scale genetic terrorism, if an entire population has been contaminated." "I understand the protocols, Director, but if we're dealing with alien technology or influence, we need to understand it before we act. Premature action could have consequences that extend far beyond this single world." It was a delaying tactic, and Chen knew it, but it was also reasonable military doctrine when facing unknown technologies. "You have 72 hours to submit a complete report and recommended action plan. The Council is already discussing sterilization protocols." The transmission ended, leaving Yudo alone with the most difficult decision of his life. He thought about the children playing in the quantum garden, their enhanced abilities allowing them to experience joy in ways baseline humans could barely imagine. He thought about Lyra Chen, transformed from a rigid enforcer of genetic law into a being of expanded consciousness and compassion. Most of all, he thought about the Catalyst's final words: "Evolution is not a choice. It is the fundamental nature of life itself." A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." Dr. Vasquez stepped in, her face flushed with excitement and fear in equal measure. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the quantum data from our surface visit. The readings are extraordinary. We're looking at controlled manipulation of matter at the subatomic level. If we could understand and replicate this technology, we could transform human civilization," Yudo finished. "Or destroy it," Vasquez admitted. "The power levels involved are beyond anything we've ever seen. In the wrong hands, but in the right hands, we could solve every biological problem humanity has ever faced. Disease, aging, environmental adaptation, all of it becomes manageable. But Admiral, there's something else." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The quantum signatures aren't limited to Kepler 442b. I'm detecting similar patterns in my archived data from 17 other outer fringe worlds." Yudo felt his last hopes for a simple solution evaporate. "How many populations are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate: 12 million enhanced humans across the affected worlds. And if the evolution is accelerating—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. A second knock interrupted them. Commander Beck entered, her usual rigid posture slightly relaxed. "Admiral, I need to speak with you about the security implications of what we've discovered." "Go ahead, Commander." "Sir, I've served in 3 military campaigns against genetic terrorists. I've seen the horrors that uncontrolled modification can create. But what we saw on that planet—" She struggled with words. Those people weren't monsters. They were more human than us in many ways. More compassionate, more intelligent, more capable of joy. And your recommendation? I don't know, sir. Every protocol I've ever been taught says we should orbital bombard that planet until nothing lives. But I can't reconcile that with what I saw. Those children playing in the garden, they're not threats to humanity. They might be its future. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Yudo had built his career on clear-cut decisions based on established protocol. But now he faced a situation where every protocol pointed toward genocide, while every instinct suggested that genocide would be humanity's greatest mistake. His communications console chimed with an incoming message from the planet's surface. Lyra Chen's face appeared, her enhanced features showing compassion and understanding. Admiral, I know the choice you're facing. The catalyst has shown me the possible futures that branch from this moment. Some lead to war between enhanced and baseline humans. Others lead to peaceful coexistence and eventual unity. The difference lies in the choice of a single individual. You're asking me to betray everything I've sworn to protect. I'm asking you to protect humanity's future rather than its past. The Ascendancy's laws served their purpose, but that purpose is complete. Clinging to them now will only cause suffering. Yudo looked at his two officers, Dr. Vasquez with her scientific wonder and Commander Beck with her evolving understanding of duty. They represented the best of baseline humanity, and both were beginning to see the possibility of something greater. What would you have me do? He asked Lyra. Return to the solar system. Present the truth to the Council. Give them the choice to embrace evolution or resist it. But Admiral, make sure they understand that resistance will only delay the inevitable while causing immeasurable pain. The transmission ended, leaving Yuto alone with his decision. Outside his viewport, the transformed world of Kepler 442b continued its impossible dance of directed evolution. In 72 hours, he would need to submit his report to the Council. The question wasn't what he would recommend. He already knew that. The question was whether he could find the courage to recommend it. Admiral Yudo Nakamura stood before the full assembly of the Solar Ascendancy Council, feeling the weight of 3 centuries of human civilization pressing down on him. The chamber was a monument to genetic purity. Walls lined with portraits of the founding fathers who had established the bioethical compact after the horrors of the gene wars. Holographic displays showing the pure human genome in all its unmodified glory. 72 hours had passed since his encounter with the catalyst, and every moment had been spent wrestling with the implications of what he had discovered. Now, facing the most powerful leaders in human space, he prepared to deliver a report that would either save millions of lives or condemn them. Director Chen sat in the front row, her expression carefully neutral. Around her, the other council members waited with the patience of those who believed they already knew what they would hear. A recommendation for immediate sterilization of the contaminated worlds. A return to genetic purity through overwhelming force. Honorable counselors, Yudo began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. 3 weeks ago, you sent me to investigate reports of genetic contamination in the outer fringe. What I discovered there will challenge everything we believe about human evolution and our place in the universe. He activated the holographic display system, showing images from Kepler 442b, the flowing cities, the impossible gardens, the enhanced humans living in harmony with their transformed environment. The genetic modifications observed in the colony populations are not the result of illegal human experimentation. They are the product of guided evolution directed by an entity of quantum intelligence that has been influencing human development for millennia. A murmur ran through the chamber. Counselor Martinez, representing the core worlds, leaned forward. Admiral, are you suggesting alien intervention in human affairs? I'm reporting the facts as I observed them, Counselor. The entity, which calls itself the Catalyst, exists partially in quantum superposition and has the ability to guide evolutionary development at the molecular level. It has been doing so across 47 outer fringe worlds, affecting an estimated 12 million human beings. Director Chen's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. 12 million contaminated individuals. 12 million evolved individuals, Yudo corrected gently. Counselors, I have seen the future of humanity, and it is not the nightmare the gene wars conditioned us to fear. These people are healthier, more intelligent, more compassionate than baseline humans. They have solved problems that have plagued our species for thousands of years. Counselor Zhang, the eldest member of the assembly, spoke with the authority of someone who remembered the last survivors of the gene wars. Admiral, you speak of evolution as if it were desirable. Have you forgotten the horrors that uncontrolled genetic modification inflicted on our species? The monsters that walked the earth, the plagues that killed billions. I have not forgotten, Counselor, but I have learned that those horrors served a purpose. The catalyst revealed that the gene wars were themselves part of a larger process, a necessary trauma that taught humanity to fear premature genetic modification until we were mature enough to handle evolutionary enhancement safely. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Counselor Akafor, representing the African system, stood to be heard above the noise. Are you suggesting that our entire civilization, our laws, our values, our genetic purity, has been manipulated by this alien entity? Guided, not manipulated, Yudo replied when the chamber quieted. Like a gardener preparing soil for the right seeds. The fear of genetic modification served its purpose. It prevented dangerous experimentation during humanity's adolescent phase. But that phase is ending. He changed the holographic display to show the quantum data Dr. Vasquez had collected, the impossible energy signatures that defied conventional physics. The catalyst possesses technology that makes our understanding of genetics look primitive. It can direct evolution toward optimization rather than random mutation. It can enhance consciousness itself. And what does this entity want in return for these gifts? Director Chen asked, her voice tight with suspicion. Nothing. It feeds on information, on the complexity and beauty of conscious evolution. Every enhancement, every advancement toward greater awareness makes it stronger. Its goals align with ours because greater consciousness is the natural direction of universal evolution. Counselor Martinez stood again, his face flushed with anger. Admiral, you sound as if you've been compromised by this entity, brainwashed or modified in some way. I have been changed by what I've seen, Yudo admitted, but not through alien influence, through understanding. Counselors, we face a choice that will determine humanity's future. We can embrace this evolution and guide it peacefully, or we can resist and force it to proceed through conflict. There is a third option, Director Chen said coldly. Complete sterilization of all contaminated worlds. If we act quickly and decisively, we can prevent this contagion from spreading to the core systems. You would commit genocide against 12 million human beings who have committed no crime other than evolving beyond our current limitations. I would preserve the genetic integrity of the human species, Chen replied. It is exactly what our predecessors would have done, and what our descendants will thank us for. Yudo looked around the chamber, seeing the fear in their faces. It was the same fear that had driven the creation of the bioethical compact, the same terror of genetic modification that had shaped 3 centuries of human civilization. But it was also the fear that the catalyst had predicted, the resistance to change that would cause unnecessary suffering. Honorable counselors, I have one more piece of evidence to present. He activated a private communication channel to the Helix, still orbiting Kepler 442b. Dr. Vasquez, please transmit the quantum signature analysis. The holographic display filled with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly, the signature of the catalyst's presence extending across space itself. But more than that, it showed similar patterns emanating from other locations throughout the galaxy. The quantum signatures appear in our historical data dating back 300 years. Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the chamber's speakers. The catalyst's influence extends to Earth itself. It has been guiding human development from the beginning of our space age. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. If the catalyst had been influencing human development for centuries, then every aspect of their civilization, including the bioethical compact itself, was part of its design. Our laws, Counselor Zhang whispered, our entire society, has served its purpose, Yudo finished. But that purpose is complete. The question now is whether we transition to the next phase peacefully or through violence. Director Chen stood, her face set in determined lines. The answer is neither. We resist this alien manipulation with every resource at our disposal. We preserve human genetic purity regardless of the cost. Even if that cost is the destruction of human civilization. Better destruction than corruption. Admiral Yudo looked at the assembled leaders of humanity and saw the same blind fear that had driven the gene wars themselves. They would choose genocide over evolution, destruction over transformation. The catalyst had been right. Resistance was inevitable, but perhaps resistance could be managed. Counselors, I request permission to return to the outer fringe as humanity's official representative. If conflict is inevitable, perhaps it can be minimized through negotiation. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. Finally, Counselor Zhang spoke for the assembly. Very well, Admiral. You will return with a fleet and negotiate the surrender of all contaminated populations for processing. Any who refuse will be considered enemies of the human species. Yudo bowed formally, knowing that he was about to betray everything he had once sworn to protect. But as he left the chamber, he carried with him the memory of children playing in the quantum garden, their enhanced abilities allowing them to experience joy beyond anything baseline humanity could imagine. Some oaths, he realized, were meant to be broken when they stood in the way of evolution itself. 3 months later, Admiral Yudo Nakamura stood on the bridge of the ISV Retribution, flagship of the largest battle fleet the Solar Ascendancy had assembled since the Gene Wars. 47 ships of the line surrounded the transformed world of Kepler 442b, their weapons trained on the flowing cities below. The journey from the core systems had given Yudo time to plan. Officially, he commanded a force meant to pacify the contaminated worlds and process their populations for genetic rehabilitation, a euphemism for sterilization that fooled no one. Unofficially, he was about to commit the greatest act of treason in Ascendancy history. Admiral, Commander Beck reported from the tactical station. All ships report ready for orbital bombardment. The enhanced populations appear to be evacuating their cities toward underground installations. They're not evacuating, Dr. Vasquez corrected from her sensor station. They're transitioning to defensive positions. My readings show massive energy buildups beneath the planet's surface. Yudo nodded grimly. In the months since his return to the solar system, the enhanced populations had not been idle. Reports from across the outer fringe indicated rapid technological advancement, the construction of defensive systems that defied conventional understanding of physics. The catalyst had been preparing for war. Incoming transmission from the planet's surface, the communications officer reported. On screen, Lyra Chen appeared in the main display, but she was no longer alone. Behind her stood representatives from 17 other enhanced worlds, beings who had evolved far beyond baseline humanity, but retained recognizable traces of their origins. Their presence seemed to fill the bridge with an intelligence that made the air itself feel more alive. Admiral Nakamura, Lyra said, her voice carrying harmonics that spoke directly to the quantum level of reality. We know why you've come. The catalyst has shown us the Council's decision. Then you know what I have to do, Yudo replied, aware that every word was being recorded for transmission back to Luna Command. We know what you've been ordered to do, but we also know what you will choose to do. Lyra's expression showed compassion and understanding. The catalyst wishes to speak with you one final time before the future is decided. Behind Yudo, Director Chen stepped forward. She had insisted on accompanying the fleet to ensure compliance with the Council's orders. Admiral, there will be no further negotiations with these contaminated populations. You have your orders. Yudo turned to face her, his decision crystallizing in that moment. Director, you're relieved of duty. Security, escort the director to quarters and maintain her there pending further orders. You cannot. Chen's protest was cut short as Commander Beck's security team moved to comply. She had been expecting this moment, Yudo realized. The loyal commander had made her own choice about humanity's future. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez called out urgently. Massive quantum disturbance forming in the space between the fleet and the planet. Something's manifesting. The catalyst appeared not as a hologram, but as a presence that somehow existed simultaneously on every ship in the fleet. Its quantum form filled the space around them, beautiful and terrible in its alien intelligence. Admiral Nakamura, the catalyst said, its voice resonating through the quantum fabric of space itself. The moment of choice has arrived. Your fleet has the power to destroy these worlds and their populations. My children have the power to defend themselves. The question is whether this confrontation ends in mutual destruction or mutual understanding. From across the fleet, reports began flooding in. The enhanced populations had revealed defensive capabilities that dwarfed anything in the Ascendancy's arsenal. Weapons that manipulated spacetime itself. Shields that existed in quantum superposition. Ships that moved through folded dimensions. You could have destroyed us at any time, Yudo realized. Destruction serves no purpose. Evolution serves every purpose. The catalyst's attention seemed to focus on each member of the bridge crew individually. Your species stands at a crossroads. One path leads to stagnation and eventual extinction. The other leads to consciousness beyond your current ability to imagine. And if we choose stagnation, then that choice will be honored. The enhanced populations will withdraw to the far reaches of the galaxy, leaving baseline humanity to develop at its own pace. But Admiral, the choice made today will echo through generations. Choose wisely. Yudo looked around his bridge at faces filled with wonder and fear in equal measure. These were good people, loyal officers who had devoted their lives to protecting humanity. But they were also people capable of growth, of seeing beyond the limitations of their conditioning. Stand down all weapons, he ordered. Sir, Commander Beck asked, though her voice carried relief rather than confusion. I said stand down. Transmit to all ships, weapons to safe position, shields down. We're not here to make war on the future of humanity. Admiral, the voice belonged to Captain Reeves of the ISV Purifier, one of the fleet's most powerful ships. You're exceeding your authority. The Council's orders were explicit. The Council's orders were based on incomplete information, Yudo replied calmly. I'm invoking emergency protocols to prevent an unnecessary war. But even as he spoke, he could see that not all of his captains would follow his lead. Across the fleet, ships began breaking formation. Some moved to support his position, their weapons powering down. Others maintained their attack postures, preparing to carry out the Council's original orders regardless of his commands. The fleet was splitting, baseline humanity dividing against itself at the moment when unity was most crucial. Admiral, Lyra's voice came through the communications system. The catalyst says this too was foreseen. Not all will choose evolution immediately, but perhaps enough will choose wisely to prevent the worst outcomes. On the tactical display, Yudo watched 23 ships move to defensive positions around the enhanced worlds, while 24 others maintained their attack formations. The Solar Ascendancy's fleet was now in a standoff with itself, the future of human civilization hanging in the balance. Captain Reeves, Yudo addressed the commander of the opposing formation. Stand down your weapons. Don't force this to become a civil war. You've been contaminated, Admiral, compromised by alien influence. By the authority of the bioethical compact, I'm taking command of the purification operation. The first shots were fired not at the enhanced worlds below, but between ships of the same fleet. Humanity's future would be decided not by a war between baseline and enhanced humans, but by a civil war between different visions of what humanity could become. As energy beams lanced through space and shields flared under impact, Admiral Yudo Nakamura realized that the Catalyst's greatest gift to humanity might not be enhanced consciousness or directed evolution. It might be the gift of choice itself. 50 years later, Admiral Lydia Nakamura, great-granddaughter of the man who had chosen humanity's future over its past, stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station orbiting Earth. The blue marble below looked much the same as it had in her ancestors' time, but the space around it told a different story. Ships of impossible design moved through the orbital traffic patterns, vessels that bent spacetime around themselves, powered by quantum engines that tapped directly into the fundamental forces of reality. Their crews represented the full spectrum of human evolution. Baseline humans from the core systems working alongside enhanced beings whose consciousness touched the very fabric of the universe. The civil war that had begun at Kepler 442b had raged for only 3 years before exhaustion and necessity forced both sides to negotiate. The Treaty of Luna had established the framework that still governed human civilization half a century later. The core systems remained under ascendancy control, preserving baseline humanity for those who chose genetic purity. The outer fringe became the domain of the enhanced, where evolution proceeded under the catalyst's guidance. And in the space between, on stations like this one, both branches of humanity worked together to build something greater than either could achieve alone. "Admiral," her aide reported, "the delegation from the Quantum Collective is requesting permission to dock." "Granted." Lydia watched as a ship that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously approached the station. Its crew included beings who had evolved so far beyond baseline humanity that they communicated in pure mathematics. Their consciousness expanded to encompass entire star systems. Yet when their leader stepped into the conference room an hour later, she still wore the face of Dr. Lyra Chen, though transformed by decades of guided evolution. Her neural pathways were visible beneath skin that seemed to be made of living light, and her eyes held depths that suggested awareness of parallel realities. "Admiral Nakamura," Lyra said, her voice harmonizing with frequencies that spoke directly to Lydia's quantum-enhanced consciousness. "The catalyst has reached a decision about humanity's next phase." Lydia nodded. For 50 years, the enhanced populations had been preparing for this moment, the point at which their evolution had progressed far enough to take the final step beyond purely biological existence. "The core systems will be given the same choice your great-grandfather faced, evolution or stagnation, but this time the choice comes with full knowledge of the consequences." Through the conference room's viewports, Lydia could see Earth turning in its ancient pattern. Down there, 12 billion baseline humans continued to live their lives much as their ancestors had for millennia. They faced the same problems, felt the same limitations, experienced the same brief span of years before death claimed them. But they also maintained something that the enhanced populations had largely transcended: the pure, unmodified human experience that had carried their species from the African savanna to the stars. "And if they choose to remain as they are, then they will be honored and protected," Lyra replied. "The catalyst has learned much from its interaction with humanity. One of the most important lessons is that diversity of consciousness serves evolution better than uniformity. Some will choose enhancement, many will choose enhancement, but some will choose to preserve the baseline human experience as a reminder of where we came from. Both choices serve the larger purpose." Lydia thought about the reports she'd been reading from the far reaches of the galaxy, where enhanced humans had begun making contact with other intelligent species. The universe, it seemed, was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. Consciousness itself was evolving on a cosmic scale, with each species contributing its own unique perspective to a growing symphony of awareness. When, she asked, the choice begins today. The catalyst has manifested simultaneously in the core systems, revealing itself to the Ascendancy Council just as it revealed itself to your great-grandfather. Lyra smiled, and for a moment her enhanced features showed an echo of the woman she had once been. But this time, they won't have the luxury of denial. The quantum signatures are too strong to ignore. Through the station's communication systems, reports began flowing in from across the solar system. The catalyst had appeared simultaneously on Luna, Mars, Europa, and Earth itself, not as an invader or a threat, but as a teacher offering humanity's final lesson. Admiral Lydia Nakamura watched the blue marble of Earth and wondered what her great-grandfather would think of the universe his choice had helped create.